Alright, it's time for another episode of everyone's favorite Blender TV tutorial time-lapse narrator Master Xeon. So in this video y'all are going to see me take a cube, the origin of all solid matter, and transform it into a dinosaur. And then I'm going to turn it into a dragon and then make it shoot fire. So while the design plan isn't exactly the best, I thought the result was worth narrating a video about. So as you can see, I start off with a cube and I come in and begin slicing and dicing, ripping with V, connecting faces. The topology doesn't matter since everything's going to be sculpted in the end. And so I'm just trying to establish that initial shape. I'm always thinking about planes whenever it comes to modeling. And in this one, it is no exception. With Alt S, I'm able to scale out. And so that's how I add the rounded edges. But the main tool to watch here is the bevel, which I use quite a bit to just give myself more geometry to work with in certain areas. But I do scratch up this base mesh together pretty quickly. But, whenever it comes to base mesh creation, I feel that, the more development I put into it in this stage, the easier it is to sculpt because I'll have some of the most basic planes already put there instead of just starting with starting with a cube and, trying to sculpt a dinosaur. So right here you see me bevel it in and begin to try to shape this area. So while I'm not trying to make this dinosaur exactly on the right, I am using it for inspiration as far as the shapes and the planes of the head shape as far as where to go for. So I'm aware that, at this point he does look a bit happy. So I'll go in and do some slicing and dicing to add more geometry for the mouth to try to work on a more angry expression. But as you can see, I'm just adding geometry where it's needed because, these are one of those instances where topology doesn't matter. Just getting the raw shapes and planar angles does. And if you can get the planes, then you can go in and sculpt and just make short work of everything. So that's basically the ideology that I have in mind. So I'm able to just bevel, inset extrude, scale it in, add loop cuts, expand it out, shrink everything in, try to get that rounded look that you see on the nostril, and use GG edge slide to try to slide everything out. So, it's always the same old tools, same classic game every time. Add a bevel here to have more of the jaw to play with. Add a bevel here to have more area of the jaw to play with. And just pull around, switching from edge to face, to vert mode, face mode, inset, pull in, begin shaping. Now, one of the things I wasn't very pleased with in the final model was the overall appearance of the eyes as they came out, but that's something that I'll just have to live with. But you'll see that it is kind of I think, a pitiful result. And I think I could have done better by giving them, you know, um, eyelids, more bevel and try to give indication of some of the bulging and sunken forms that you see on the head. Just trying to make my sculpting job as easy as possible. So, since I'm just going to take this model and apply a subdiv level 2, it doesn't matter how bad the topology is, because it'll all end in quads once I apply a subdiv level 2. It's just or a subdiv period. So that always just ends pretty well, but mainly the goal of this video was to just make a dinosaur since I haven't made one in a long time, and I saw this picture and thought it was pretty good. I just found it on Google Images, and then on top of that, I've made dinosaurs in the past, but they were pretty horrible. So horrible, they're probably not worth showing. Just little green dinosaurs, probably like 400 verts. So, nothing pretty. So I draw out the tongue, pull it in so he doesn't look like a dog. And it's always just edge sliding and Alt S scaling to just push out on the normal. And then with the tongue, I grab that edge loop, press Alt B, rolled the wheel to just smooth the fall off, and that rounded that part off nicely. Merge all these verts because it's starting to get kind of matty. And right here I apply the subdiv level 2. And then make some last minute changes to the face. Decided to open the jaw. So unfortunately he has this dog expression for quite a while, but it is something I deal with later on. But as you can see, for a base mesh that I haven't even begun to sculpt, I'm off to a pretty good start. And I mean, in real time, I probably actually spent about 2 hours on this whole video. So, it's not like an all-day task or anything like that. So now I'm going in a dynamic topology, put on a mat cap, and I just begin sculpting and making planes and flattening and digging. Now, Blender's dynamic topology is something that is quite comparable to ZBrush's own Dynamesh, which is absolutely brilliant. But Blender's own algorithm is brilliant in itself, and so much so I've become accustomed to just integrating into my workflow, being able to just say, F it, and just jump a model into dynamic topology, begin sculpting, and not even have to think about all of the troubles I was dealing with before with geometry. I'm able to just play with forms and shapes and just cut and grab and pull. And, if I play nice, I'm able to even bake it onto the original mesh if I was, playing by the rules nicely. But here you'll see me struggle to get some of the face shapes for quite a while. But by the end of it, I think the result is still pretty alright. Now, as far as the smoke materials go, it's something you won't see for a while, but I actually import the material from another file, so you won't get to see me pull a bunch of color ramps and make smoky awesomeness while explaining it. Just know that I had, the smoke set to 0 density and everything's multiplying against it, but I'll go over more of that whenever we get to that phase. So as far as the sculpting goes, my favorite brushes in it are definitely grab, but grab is gummy. Grab moves things nasty. And then clay. Clay is your classic clay. You want to pretend you're a sculptor, clay is the brush for you. Smooth, necessary, that's why you can't ever change it. And the draw brush. Now the draw brush has the curve where you control the fall off in a way that the point on the brush moves. So if you're coming from a ZBrush background and you want it to behave like the Damien standard, just know that you can choose the sharp nipple curve that's on the 4th from the left and the 3rd from the right under curves, and you can get a pretty nice fall off for all your sculpting strokes. So here I'm also just pulling forms to try to establish the face. I thought he looked a bit gatorish, but definitely a lot better than the initial cube that I started off with. So a couple of times throughout it I was thinking about giving up, but I just wanted to see exactly, how far I could take a dynamic topology sculpt. And using my custom dam standard, I'm able to indicate some forms here, come in with the clay strips and begin breaking away. Still trying to control it and get the forms and the shapes, which I thought were still off even at the end, but I was just goofing off here. Like I said, not trying to model it exactly, just trying to get some of the details so it has the indication of being a realistic lizard of destruction. And sculpting is just great. I use the draw brush to build up my angles, and then I use polish to interpolate between them, smoothing it and then giving me that shape, that crafting of the shadows. And that's really one of the things that helps indicate the form that you're going after here. And that's pretty much this whole thing. I mean, that's pretty much the only thing I'm thinking of the entire time that I'm sculpting, besides this little thingy in the middle of his mouth. I'll go ahead and just put that in there. Try to give him an eyelid. Just know that I felt horribly at it. I realized that part was a lot bulgier, so I tried to go with the inflate brush. Problem with the inflate brush is sometimes you can cause some unnecessary creasing that you just can't get rid of easily. So I try to capitalize on it and just cut into it and just reinflate it again, make it look like it was part of the plan. Just add more shapes. Try to get some roundness, thickness around the nostrils. Give some sort of indicators to the face, and just complexify it a bit. So some of these lines I'm putting in are just random because I already know the proportions are off, and I'm also using a picture that's at an angle. But I try to break away from using references as my constraints to be used in the 3D/2D viewport, because when you're using reference images, you're looking at two sets of 2D images or however many references you have. So I want to look at an image for inspiration, not as the rules of whatever it is that I'm making. That was like the whole thing with the curved car was to make a realistic looking car without having to rely on blueprints. So we're polishing up the head. Just can't leave that looking polygonal. Good friend, the draw brush. Put those lines in. Now this part was looking mighty polygonal, so I come in and zoomed in with the polish brush and just dense up the geometry, and then try to crease it up. So in the final stages, I try to crease up some of the more prominent areas and just make it look more detailed and finished, instead of having such a rough pixelated kind of look. Try to cut in an area for the teeth to be inserted. This part's probably inaccurate too, but I pull it off. And that's because this baby's fire is the only illumination of the scene. So goodbye picture, and I'll put a decimate and set the rule of thumb for me with decimate is I always put the decimate at 0.3, apply it, put it at 0.3 again, then apply it just to get the geometry to be workable in the viewport. Now right here you see me in Vertex paint mode. Now since I decimated the geometry, I don't have the density to be able to have such a vast texturing palette for just painting this, but that's okay because the simplicity of the color combined with the multiplied cavity masking, cavity painting, will pull off the goal that we're after here. So I'm just splashing colors random places, just trying to yellow up some of the bony areas, probably completely inaccurate in where I'm placing the purple internal bloody areas and the pink mouth. I don't even try, and I was thinking of that when I was doing it, with the painting here. I didn't even try. I could have showed y'all some tips and tricks with filling color and using selections to have more control and Vertex paint, but instead I do this. I just draw paint on it. and that's okay. I come back, overlay it with some whitish green, and as you can see with the poly paint, it doesn't go around normals very well. So there's some areas that look a little sparse and just are lacking in the textures and don't blend quite well, but that's okay. It is okay. So now I'm going to give it a bone, and I'm going to shove that bone up his neck and give him a bottom jaw and give him an upper jaw and parent him, and got a simple hierarchy. You know, it's a head, doesn't require a lot. Automatic weight, since it's decimated, it's a lot easier to control with the weight painting, but as you can see, the automatic weight's actually worked out alright for me. But he needs teeth, so classic trick, bring up a circle, merge them all. I don't care about the geometry. Add a subdivision, not a subdivision, a simple deform. I'm going to rotate on the side so that way it bends properly, and by controlling the amount of bend, I'm able to get a pretty nice tooth here pretty quick. And I'll use the face snapping to project the object onto the surface and orient it on the surface, and just duplicate and rotate to make these two rows of teeth very quickly. So whenever it comes to snapping, it's a good idea, if you don't understand it, to spend a bit making sure that you get the hang of how snapping works, because it's powerful, it's useful. Snapping will make all of your oriental dreams come true. Oriental is probably not the right word. Orientational dreams come true. So snapping is something that you definitely want to get the hang of, and I just turn it on with Control-Shift-Tab to change my snapping type, and a Control-Tab to turn it on and off. And you can see the options I have enabled for it at the bottom. And just going to drop these teeth in. Doesn't even matter, they're all sticking to the surface perfectly. Scale these teeth, make them bigger. You know, this dinosaur uses Colgate. Look how white these teeth are. Drop them in the surface. Take these, move them up, merge them together. And now I'll put a mirror modifier, give it the same origin as the dinosaur head so they're mirrored perfectly, and then that's it. And I'll take these, join them to that, separate them back out into their own parts so they just obtain the mirror, but none of the other responsibility. And now I'll just use bone parenting. So yeah. Let me show you something. I guess that would be kind of appropriate for this scene since it is fire related. So I've got to turn off the project, or else it'll mess up my geometry. Just give it some polysphere eyeballs. Mirror that. And so I try to give it the same situation as the teeth, but the eyeballs just got weird. I didn't know what was happening. So I just joined it with the teeth. You know, whatever, join, separate it, and that was it. So just parent those with the bones so there's no weight painting, and now I have a controllable dino head. So, you know, keep in mind my goal here was to be fast and not spend all day working on this. Just ignore that. And, you know, just make a quick and fun render since I haven't put anything online a couple of days. Usually I wait for my last video to get about 500 views, then I'll make a new one. But, you know, I am completely fan driven, so thank all of y'all for your subscription and views. Y'all certainly keep me going with my thirst for Blender mastery, and want to show that to y'all in rapidly sped up videos with poor narration. So now I'll just create a simple animation. I just turned on keyframing and set it to rotation, and I'm just moving it through the timeline, making separate rotations for it. And it's pretty awful. I could have went in the graph editor and added some velocity or something. And, you know, retrospect also could have added camera shake, but I didn't even do that. Uh-oh, screen is going dark. Why is the screen going dark? Alright. Alright, hopefully this lets me just continue with the commentary and it's still at the right point in the timeline. So now I got the head rotating and just opening his mouth. So, nothing fancy here, just some poor animation. But I figured I'd Andrew Price it to try to create a finished tutorial result and just go all the way to the end instead of just, showing some part of my workflow. And now I put a plane in his mouth. This plane will never be seen in a render, but I parent it to the bone so it moves along with it. And now I'm going to make sure the normals are facing the right way and put particles in his mouth so it's just spitting out Alka-Seltzer, except it's actually fire. So raise the normal count, mess with the lifetime, and just fine tune the fire. I finally add a collision to the dinosaur itself so that way it destroys particles so fire is just not developing and his mouth stuck to it forever, trapped inside the mesh, which just happens to me. So it's not going to show particles in the render, but it will show them in a viewport. And that's why I changed the bottom up to random, up to Brownian. Made them emit from the vertices. And now I definitely have the look I want. So I choose crap smoke, or at least that's what I feel like they should call it under quick smoke. Quick smoke gets you subpar results, but it's quick because it's just one button. But what I didn't know was that the settings that they give you by default are so bad that the fire just looks unrealistic all the time, and it doesn't have to. So instead of going over all the materials, I actually just go in another file and import the material from a fire study I've been doing. But just know that you're going to need a color ramp to modify your density, your emission color, and the velocity. And you're going to have to mess with the color ramp using different colors being blended into it in order to get a more realistic fire fringing on the edges. So, that's another tutorial, another day. But now I turned off gravity on the particles, so now the particles no longer sink to the ground like balls of fire. They just float out in space, and I just go through a series of bakings and tests to try to get the fire working correct. And done baking, and let's see what we got here. So this is my first result with the fire. For some reason it looks like the fire is very weak, not very dominating, which in retrospect I know I should have used a particle texture to edit the strength of it, but for some reason I didn't. And so I just ended up proceeding all the way to the end of the project, playing with the basic flame settings for a moment, and realizing that this is bad. These flames look horrible. High resolution has turned out. Why do they look so bad? First, the dragon's so dark. Put a Hemi, set the point 2. Give him material, and now he's lit up. And I was able to check on Vertex paint, so now that's actually his texture. And first I'll lower the step size. Step size will help the fire dramatically during render time, but at the expense of lots of render time. And this is the part where I import the material that I use for it. So I just bring it in, and like I said, you will need to mess with the velocity, the emission, the density, and the temperature. And so all of those just have color ramps, modifying them to give it much more interesting values. As you can see here, this is a much nicer result. And so I play with the density settings to try to make the fire cooperate in the scene with the monster here and not overtake him or penetrate or just overlap his body. Told you I didn't like that eye, so I try to fix it. I don't fix it very well. Fix it enough for this render. that's about it. At this point, I want his body to be illuminated by the fire, so I could use indirect lighting. That probably wouldn't work. So using point lights would be a lot faster and emulate the same effect, and while it's not 100% accurate, it'll be close enough. So by turning on sphere, I'm able to choose the distance it hits it, and I'm just going to basically keyframe the light to turn on when there's fire, and then turn off when there's not. And just setting keyframes on the light, set the intensity all the way to 4 before turning those lights back out. And I'll just duplicate this light after making this apparent of the particles, and voila. So now the dragon is being illuminated by the fire it's blowing. So at some point it became a dragon, no longer a dinosaur. You know, right here it looks like it just ate some spicy food, so I have to mess with the fire a little bit. But first I want to bring in the AO pass to multiply it onto his body and try to get a more interesting shade for it in the compositor. And I want there to be red bleeding from the edges. So I'll raise the density to see if that'll give me more fire. And, you know, that's not too bad. It's going to require a little bit of compositing. However, I should have probably messed with the fire a little bit longer, but I got tired of bacon, then videos get longer. Try to set a time limit on these things. So, you know, I'll turn on normal pass, not use it. Turn on material index, not even get it working. Use freestyle, not even get that to show up in my render at the end. So from here I use a color ramp on the AO, and I try to use the material index, which gets me no avail since the cube cut it off. I use the color balance to just try to get some more interesting values out of the fire, so that I can just mix it back with it. So I was trying to go for a posterized look in the final render, so I think I did accomplish it by the end. But I wanted a vibrant fire picture, not so much a realistic, accurate picture, but, you know, decent flames, decent monster. You know, add all that back in, and I get the exact look that I think I was going for. And then using Amaranth tools, I think made by Pablo Vasquez, I'm able to easily just drop in a vignette using a template, and that gives me the final look. So I changed it to add, looks horrible. Go back to multiply, that's good. So that is the final result. Happy Blender.